Great, so let's bring out Michelle, who you probably know from Kiss Kiss Bang Bang or Mission Impossible or True Detective, or there she is. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, now this is a great character study movie, which we saw you do in Trucker, which hopefully some people have seen. Just really, it's one of those movies that very few actresses can find and get and do. It's just because such a rich character. You play Maggie Swan, who's like an army medic.
Correct.
Comes home. She has a 5-year-old son. She has to connect with him and deal with like repercussions. And can you talk about how you met Claudia Myers, who wrote and directed it?
I agree. I mean, these sort of roles are few and far between, and they tend to live in the independent world, I find, which is all right with me. I sort of love to collaborate in independent film. I love sort of the fast pace in which you work. Claudia sent it to my agent. My agent read it and said, I think you're really going to like this. And from the minute that I, finished it, I knew that I had to meet Claudia. I sat down with her a few days later, and I was struck at her passion to tell this story. She actually worked on behalf of the Army, the military, for 5 years, doing training videos and in-house documentaries on behalf of the military to understand our soldiers and upon their return home and how better the military could serve them. So this is something that she had really researched, and she had done her homework on, and so I really felt comfortable in her hands. I couldn't imagine anybody else at the helm.
Yeah, it definitely feels like that. It feels like someone who knows that system. And it's something we don't really see movies like this, where we've seen a lot of movies about soldiers coming home after Vietnam or Iraq or whatever, but never a woman who's a mother and dealing with those kind of things.
It's true. Stories about our female vets are nearly absent from our culture. Yet there are over 200,000 women in active duty. There are 40% of them are moms, and they're really conflicted. They're women that are passionate about serving their country. They love their jobs. They're good at them, and yet at the same time they're devoted mothers. But unfortunately, they're judged a little bit as well if they leave home to take care of if they leave home to serve their country, then they're a bad mother. If a man leaves home to serve his country, then he's an honorable man. So it really kind of brings up a broader issue, which is why it intrigues me, this story.
Yeah, we see a lot of Maggie Swan in the movie. We see a lot of different sides. We see her family life. We see her, for people who don't know, Fort Bliss is an actual Army base in El Paso, Texas?
It is.
El Paso, Texas, yeah. And she goes to work there and train other medics, and she's a sergeant there, so she's a lot of men. It's really very multifaceted. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, how did you go? How do you go about preparing for all the different things?
Well, we were really fortunate. As a result of Claudia having done her homework, she actually submitted it to the Army because we really wanted to be able to shoot at Fort Bliss and be able to utilize them as a resource. And we actually got full approval from the State Department, and that is because she wrote it with such authenticity and that it was very realistic. So, which is really surprising because the movie itself brings up a lot of controversial issues, but it's a testament to the Army and them wanting this story told, even if it's not necessarily a recruiting poster. So we shot down at Fort Bliss, and we were able to do an extensive research trip where I went through an intensive medic training, really just to understand the technical aspects of my character and just sort of get a glimpse into that world. But what proved to be really invaluable was the time that I was able to spend with the female vets down there, and to really ask them questions and have them share their stories and their experiences with me. And they were very candid and very honest, and I was very grateful for that.
You also have a really good cast. I mean, this is obviously about Maggie, but we see a lot of great actors around you kind of showing up and having scenes with. One of them is Ron Livingston, who's always great.
He's fantastic. Oh, my gosh. I love Ron. I love Ron in everything that he does, but I think what's so great about this film and what he does so well is the storytelling is so balanced, and that was in Claudia's writing. You know, this is a world in which people live that it's a very gray area. You know, it's not black and white. It's not no one's wrong, no one's right. All of the characters are making sacrifices. You know, this is a tough issue. You know, people leaving home and leaving behind loved ones and children and families, knowing they may never come back. I mean, that's huge. So at different times, you align yourself with the character's perspective, and if the story's told right, then maybe, you know, a few scenes later, you'll be aligning yourself with another character's perspective. So I really appreciate that about Claudia, and I really appreciate that about all of the actors' performances. They're very real, they're very grounded, and I feel like everyone's really doing the best they can in a very imperfect world, which is, I think, life, and that's, you know, that's powerful to me.
Now, Ron plays Maggie's ex-husband, or is it baby daddy? Is that, I don't know what the proper term, he's actually the husband, or just the boyfriend or not, but...
He's the ex-husband.
Ex-husband, yeah. So we have actually, the first clip actually has you and Ron Livingston talking about your son, who's 5 years old at this time, when Maggie returns. She's been gone for about 2 years or so most of his life, and I think, do you want to set that up at all, the scene in the kitchen, or...?
Yeah, she's been deployed. This is her second time coming home. So she has been gone for about a good third of his life, half of his life. And upon her return the first time, they get divorced. I think he cheats on her. They ultimately get divorced, which is interesting also to know that female vets have amongst the highest divorce rate in the country. And that's specifically because of the non-traditional roles that they take on and that their partners have to take on. And there's a lot of difficulty in that. So he's struggling with that. And he doesn't want her to re-enlist for obvious reasons. But she feels very dedicated to her platoon. She's a medic. She's depended on, and she's been with this group of people for, you know, years. So she's as much dedicated to serving them as she is her family, and so she's very conflicted.
So let's talk about the son, Paul. He's played by a young actor named Oakes.
Oakes Fagley.
Oakes Fagley, yeah. And I'm always interested when I talk to actors who have to do scenes with kids, because there used to be kind of a myth that you don't want to work with children because they're too hard, but I feel like he got some great performance out of you, and vice versa.
I completely agree with you. No, I've worked with a lot of kids, and it's interesting because everybody's like, oh, you never want to work with kids or kids and dogs or animals or something like that. Animals I can understand, but kids are really inspiring. You know, maybe it's just been my experience. I've been very fortunate in that way. In particular, Oakes is just a really phenomenal actor and very, very present, and knew his lines and understood what the movie was about. And we have some pretty emotional scenes, some kind of, I would say, physical scenes. And that's a little daunting when his folks are in the other room. You know, you have to sort of run it by them. But he handled himself really, really well, and he does so good. And this movie wouldn't be what it is without his performance. It's really great. And, you know, watching children act is a total reminder, because they really work with such abandon and they don't think about it. And so to watch him be so present is really just a gift to me.
Yeah, a lot of the scenes are really serious. And I was wondering, what must be going through this kid's head? This woman I just met is yelling at me and getting mad at me.
It was, you know, we had one day of rehearsal, you know, and it was just a matter of, you know, I have kids myself, and, you know, I can kind of relate to them on their level, I guess. And we just sort of got to know each other a little bit, and I just tried to keep it light with him when we weren't shooting, you know, so he knew that I was really just acting most of the time.
Yeah, you talked earlier about you know, doing the research and training for this role, and you mentioned Fort Bliss, and I think the next clip we're going to show is actually some of the training that you're doing as a sergeant, training some of the soldiers. Were a lot of the soldiers, were they actual soldiers?
Yes,
oh, okay.
yes. I mean, we were so fortunate. I mean, we were able to use all of their vehicles, all of their equipment, their subject matter experts. All of the soldiers, the background actors it was incredibly intimidating, by the way. But it also really motivated us, because when you're surrounded by something that is so authentic and so real, and you're portraying somebody and an aspect of our country that is, we have to take it seriously. And so everything was true to Army specifications and standards at all costs. And so so that's the clip. But
And you have to boss them around. So
I got to boss them around. Yeah. They were troopers.
Were they at all
Pardon the pun. That was terrible.
were they at all intimidated by you or by having to act for the first time, or really?
Yeah, they were a little bit, but listen, you only have to tell a soldier to do something once. I mean, they seriously, of course, as you would expect, they take direction, they make their marks, and they were very excited. I think that initially everyone in general was probably skeptical of us. What's Hollywood coming in, and are they going to misrepresent us? And I think once they saw how serious we were taking it, they trusted us, and they actually really embraced the process, and we were really grateful to that. We've screened it for them, and they're incredibly supportive of the film. So
That's great. Let's see a second clip, which is actually on Fort Bliss. I have to admit, I was really surprised when we went to Fort Bliss and you actually saw this, and as well as some of the scenes in Afghanistan when we flashed back. Because I assumed, okay, she's going to go home, and it's going to be like an hour of drama and talking, but actually no, there's actually some pretty serious action and stuff like that in this, and
we were really fortunate. We were able to shoot the Afghani training camps, and all of that exists at Fort Bliss. So the production value that it gave us was incredible. I mean, we really shot this movie on a micro budget in 21 days. So we were literally running and gunning. So we wouldn't have been able to make this kind of film without their support. And as a result, we were, everything from guns and ammo and all of those things, and soldiers, and not having to, not that Claudia didn't direct or choreograph these scenes, but these soldiers were trained to do what they did. They knew inherently what to do and the way to act and behave in these scenes, and so it was so instrumental in making it very real.
Yeah, when I asked about working with Claudia, and I hate asking this question because I'm sure you get it a lot by working with a woman director. I don't know how many times you have, but she wrote it, she directed it, and she's also like it's a pretty heavy duty movie that I think this is her first movie, right? Or
it's essentially her first movie. She did a smaller movie years ago, but this is really her kind of first big endeavor.
Yeah, it's really pretty amazing. And so what was it like working with her? Like how does she generally work with you as far as the different types of scenes?
She is so calm and cool and collected. I mean, I got to be honest. I mean, I couldn't imagine doing it with anybody else, male or female. I really appreciated her writing style, her direction, which was one of a lot of restraint and balance, as I said earlier. And so, I think that was really why it makes this story emotional in the end, even though it's not very emotional on the surface. It's not very sentimental. We really crafted we talked about in depth prior to shooting the emotional journey of this character, so that in the end you have something that's a payoff and it's quite impactful. And she was just very, very great at directing that and keeping track of that. And again, when you're shooting something in 21 days and you are literally all over the place in one day, that can be quite difficult on everybody. And she was just really great at keeping the tone. I really respect all the actors' performances because a lot of people just came in for 1 day, 2 days, and I feel like everybody's in the same movie, and everybody's performances are very grounded, and she just was just very, very solid all the way through.
Was the script very sacred, or did she feel like when she had the good actors, just let things go? And
it was pretty sacred. I mean, she was definitely open to ideas, but because also, the way the story is told in terms of deployment and re-enlisting, there's sort of a lot of things that are true to the Army that we had to preserve. And so maybe particular scenes that needed dialogue changes, we would do very, very slight ones, but it was really, really tight when I got the script, and when I read it, I felt already, having, before I had done my research, felt very connected to this character.
Let's talk about another actor who kind of comes in and out, like you said, Manolo Cardona.
Yes.
Yeah. I wasn't really familiar with his work, but he has a pretty major role. He's kind of like a love interest, but someone who kind of has to deal with some of the things she's been dealing with, and kind of. We're going to see a clip with him soon. Can you talk about working with him? I don't really know his work at all.
Manolo is a fantastic actor. He's very well known in Latin America, and he's done a lot of great work there. And Claudia had thought of him for this project, for this role, so he came in, and he's a terrific actor, and he really sort of represents sort of the melting of this ice. Really, she's really brought home with her a lot of issues from the Army, a lot of trauma that she's experienced, and a lot of things that have happened to her. And she's very guarded, and she doesn't know how to emotionally extricate herself from these experiences. And so they meet each other, and he slowly starts to break down that wall, and he represents that to her.
Now, I'm going to show a clip of you two together, and it's one of the few clips we can actually show in an public audience. So,
Thank you.
For reasons you'll find out when
now
you
you're
see the
all
movie.
going to go see the movie, right?
Exactly.
Whatever it takes.
But let's see that clip, that third clip. Yeah, I think now's probably a good time to go out to the audience. I'm sure they came here, they want to talk to you and ask you questions and stuff like that, hopefully about For Bliss. But I guess we'll...
I noticed there was a scene there that dealt with sexual assault, and also I'm curious to hear about that, and I'm curious to hear about your experience with working with vets, female vets in particular. Did you get a chance to hang out with them, talk to them more? What was involved with the backstory?
I did spend a lot of time with female vets, and their experiences and their stories were invaluable, as I said, to my prep. And one of a common experience that they shared with me was a sexual assault on different levels. Unfortunately, it's incredibly prevalent. Over a third of the military women report it, and we know that it's underreported. So we wanted to touch on that in this film. We didn't feel like we could actually truly represent female vets' full experience in the Army, when that is something that is so very, very common. So that is something that she experiences. She obviously takes that home, and that emotionally affects her in such a way that she's unable to move forward, or she sort of responds to it in another manner, as you see as you will see in the movie. Does that answer your question? You know what? We did have a backstory for her, and it was one that you'll see in the movie. Her father is a career man in the military, and so she felt very compelled herself to join the military. And she's a highly decorated military, very, very good at her job. She deployed the first time, met this guy. This guy became unfaithful, and she was pregnant. And then she left again, and then and now she's struggling with how to be a parent long distance, and what that incurs and what that entails. So that was kind of the crux of the backstory that I created, and then it was really about emotionally gathering the information from these women. And what I took from all of them, which was really important for me to try to convey, was how grounded these women are and how matter of fact they are. Which is not me. I'm pretty dramatic and emotional, I would say, and so I respected that about them. They've endured a lot, and they have a very there's a very peaceful quality about them, even though there may not be peaceful on the inside. And so I wanted to sort of be able to project that, and it was really important for me to practice a lot of restraint with this performance, because that's who these women are. And so I wanted to really convey that in a very honest and truthful way, in the way that they shared it with me.
Hi, Michelle. My name is Evan. This is a 3-part question. What was the experience like in the Mission...
So that's 3 questions, right?
Yes. What was the experience like being in the Mission Impossible franchise and Trucker? What were Tom Cruise, Philip Seymour Hoffman, and Jimmy Bennett like from your point of view? And are you going to be in Mission Impossible 5?
Okay, so first question was how was it working in Mission Impossible? Trucker was okay. Gotcha. Mission Impossible franchise, amazing. I remember getting that call and that I got that job, and it was one of the highlights of my career. Absolutely. J.J. Abrams is a phenomenal director. Tom Cruise is one of the most generous actors I've ever worked with. It was an extraordinary opportunity for me in my career, and I had the best time doing it. I got to travel the world. It was incredible. I don't believe I'm going to be in Mission Impossible 5, and unless I beg them and plead them. Trucker is probably one of my fondest experiences working. That's another indie that I'm so proud of. We made that in 19 days. For a budget of $1 million. I learned how to drive a truck. It's one of the things that I'm so grateful about my job, that I really truly do get to step in the shoes of different people and get to learn different things. Yes, and Jimmy Bennett is an amazing young actor. He was great to work with as well. Like I said before, I've been very fortunate to work with great young actors, and Jimmy was no different. Philip Seymour Hoffman, it's sad to see that he's gone, because he was an amazing actor, and I will remember the time with him very fondly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are
By the way,
you?
I'm your big fan.
Thank
And
you.
You are so gorgeous.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love your hair.
Keep talking.
Yeah. You look different, I love your hair, By the way, this movie looks so heavy.
Yes.
So, in real life, are you really tough? Or, not really?
Yeah.
Then actually, what kind of...
I have beautiful hair and I'm tough.
Okay. Then what kind of movie do you like to make, actually? Because you did so many action movies,
Yeah,
I want to see your horror movie, maybe.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, by the way, for all the compliments, firstly. In terms of what kind of films that I like to make, you can just look at my resume and you can see that, it's very varied, I love action. I'm fairly athletic, and I enjoy that. I think I'm an adrenaline junkie in real life. And so it's just fun. There's nothing better than that. But I'm also obviously a drama queen, and I love drama, and I appreciate real stories, people that feel like they could live right next door to me. So I like to live in the weight of that. For instance, a complete 180, next month I'm coming out with a love story, which is a genre that I've never sort of tackled before. And I like comedy. I find comedy be the most challenging thing that I've ever done. And most actors will say that, it's very daunting for me. And I like big and small, as you can tell, So I just want to continue to challenge myself. And if it's something that if the material is good, whether it's stage or independent film, big film, TV, cable, HBO, for example, or whatever it is, I'm not sort of greedy like that. I just want to live wherever that nice material is, or that challenging material is.
Yes, Source Code is a great movie. So after you see Fort Bliss on Friday, go out and rent Source Code as well.
There you go. Thank you.
Hi, what are your hopes for roles for women in Hollywood?
Just more of these, more roles that are really, multidimensional. It's interesting. Somebody the other day said to me as they were watching this movie, they were like, "Wow, you're really tough. How do you play so tough?" And I'm like, "Well, I am tough. I am. I'm not just like cute and bubbly and all these things. Like I have multiple dimensions, as most of the women I know do, who inspire me. And I just feel like a lot of times, unfortunately, in film, we only see one side maybe reflected for women. And so this is what I live for, somebody who's conflicted, somebody who's torn, somebody who's flawed. I like playing characters that aren't necessarily likable. I've said that before. It's, but I like people kind of coming around in the end and sort of understanding their perspective. And I think that's powerful. I mean, that's the power of film, and being able to, to share something is to enlighten somebody, I mean, when I first read this script, I was completely enlightened. This wasn't something that I was privy to or I had ever encountered. Never considered sort of the cost of war on families or anything like that. So, when I see it, I consider it a real privilege, to be inspired by it, but then be able to share it, in a really believable way, hopefully.
Hello. I would call you a very good actress because when I watch you, I forget the other roles that you played in.
Oh, thank you.
But I have to say this, I won't forget who you were in True Detective, because I was upset that, not that you slept with Matthew McConaughey, but that you told Woody Harrelson.
Well, that's really interesting, actually, because, speaking of scripts being really, really great, you never really needed to touch Nick Pizzolatto's writing. And, at the same time, he was always really open with the actors and said, you should really come to me if you ever feel like you need to change anything or you want to add anything or do anything. And it was always written, that scene, Matthew and I would sort of do the deed, and that would be sort of my catalyst for actually getting out of that relationship, for like self-preservation. That was always my motivation, right? And we were about 5 months into it at this point. So had been living with the characters for quite some time and felt like we were all kind of informed on a different level. And that scene was coming up a couple of days later, where I would sit down with Woody at the kitchen table and I tell him, I need to tell you something. I need to tell you something. I slept with someone and you know him. And then that was the end of the scene. And after I'd done the deed with Matthew, it became very apparent to me that that was the act of having needed to preserve myself and my family. But I still felt like, as the character, like I needed to get revenge. I didn't feel like that was my act of revenge. So my revenge would actually be telling it to his face and really just getting that reaction. So I asked Nick, after we rehearsed it and we were going to lunch after that, I said, I really feel like I need to stick it to him. I think there's something more there. And he said, okay, well, let me go to lunch and let me think of something. Ask Woody if he's open to that. And then he came back with the scene. It was written on a napkin, and Woody was so cool with it. And we shot it, and it just felt like I had honored the character in a way that like I needed to. And so I tip my hat to Nick for allowing me to do that. And that's a great writer, a great collaborator. Is being able to collaborator. That sounds like a new Marvel comic thing. Maybe that's a role that I want to do, the collaborator. Right?
But who would you credit with? The question that I wanted to ask is, who would you credit with really making you become serious as an actress? Like, who would you say really helped guided you and brought it out to where you could just assume any role, basically?
God, that's a really good question. I haven't studied acting, so I can't say necessarily a coach. This sounds so cliche and so silly, but I had folks that always told me I could do whatever I wanted to do, and always said to follow my heart. And so I did from the very beginning, as did my brothers, whatever we chose to do. And so I always felt a confidence, I should say, but I guess also feeling just the way that I connect to material, I really feel like I'm meant to do this, and I hope I am, because I can't imagine what else I would do for the rest of my life. So I think for me is sort of feeling that fear of taking on a role. I was shitting myself before I took this. I was saying, no, I can't. No, I can't do that. Yes, I have to do that. You know, it was the same thing with my audition for Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. I remember being, I was literally calling up my agent, sitting in the hotel room, ready to go in to read with Shane, and I called up my agent, and as the phone was ringing, I was calling her up to cancel it because I was like, there's no way I can do this. And then I hung up, and I was like, that means you have to do this, you know? And I really am a firm believer that once you sort of tackle that fear once, it gives you the confidence to do it and again. And I've done it in roles that have always been very daunting to me and challenging on the outset. But then, you know, trucker, for example, I'm like, there's no way I'm going to be able to get my truck driver's license. And then there I am sitting in like truck driving school, like out on the 10, you know, and there's a trucker saying, you don't look like a truck driver. And I said, well, I'm going to be one. I was like, what am I saying? You know, so I think it's just taking that leap of faith once, and then that's sort of what has guided me, and knowing that how it fulfills me. I don't need anybody else sort of telling me. I know what it does for me, and so that's enough to just continue to propel myself in that direction, I suppose. That's a really long-winded answer. Try being married to me.
I can't tell you how many directors I've spoken to over the years who basically to ask them about casting you, and they said, well, we saw Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. So if you hadn't done that movie, it would be like, I mean, I don't know, it'd be a whole different career path.
It was, I mean, truly, it was. I mean, it was, I was so fortunate to be a part of that. And, you know, it was one of the best learning experiences I've ever had. I love Robert Downey with all of my heart. He was so supportive. He totally took me under my wing, and I love that film.
Hi, Michelle. I just wanted to say I think it's great that Hollywood is having more female strong roles. I think they need that. But just wanted to ask, what was more challenging in terms of filming Fort Bliss? Was it the physical aspect, because I know you had to do the training, or the mental, aspect of just having to prepare yourself for the role?
Oh, God, that's a really good question, because the physical was quite challenging. It made me have a complete appreciation for the troops and sort of the climates in which they live and work in. We shot down in El Paso. It's, in the middle of summer, truly in August, and it was hot. And you're wearing a lot of equipment, and, it's hot. So physically and doing those sorts of things were kind of daunting. But I would have to say just emotionally, I really invested in it, and I really did everything that I could to embody this character. And, it's the character stuck with me for a long time. I'm really proud of it. We showed it now to a couple of different core audiences. We showed it last night in Washington, D.C. at the Women's War Memorial. And that was an incredibly proud moment, when vets come up and they say that they feel that this is the most honest depiction that they've seen of them. And so, I say thank you, because that's what we wanted and we intended to do. And so, I would say then it was the emotional job. Then, as hard as whatever I did was, that's the payoff. That's why I do what I do.
So along the lines of what you just mentioned, of how the character stuck with you for some weeks, and the emotional toll it took on you, can you elaborate more on that aspect?
Yeah, I would just say, it's I think also because I took it very seriously, and again, I'm portraying real people. There's a real responsibility, I think, that one takes, and so. I would say that I was hyper-focused on that, and probably that, the only thing in my life that I was hyper-focused on for a good couple of months. And again, it's 21 days, so really, truly, I was living it. And so then when you shoot, you finish, and everybody says goodbye, and you're just sort of sitting there. It's a little bit difficult to shut off, and so it just sticks around. That particular character is stuck around for a while, and so much so though it's impassioned me to try to shed light on these women and their stories and their struggles. So in that respect, it's been a very good thing.
If you like what you've seen and heard, please go see it. Tell your friends. Movies like this, they don't have the advertising of like a Maze Runner or big studio movies, so it really requires people to be interested in seeing and telling their friends. Thanks
Yes,
for coming out. I want to give
please.
a great big warm round of applause for Michelle for coming out and joining us.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for